is my understanding is that the goal is to improve trust with the community overall, and help with procedural justice issues. And so to the extent that we know or don't know whether or not we have trust issues with various areas of the community or not, I think that would be an important thing to be able to measure the impact of these cameras on, so that we're not just assuming that they're doing what we intend them to do, but we're actually measuring those outcomes. So my question, I guess, is that under consideration? Is that built into the policy, and kind of how have you been thinking about that?
So, well, actually, let me start with this too. I guess the highly publicized body-worn camera cases are the extremes, right? So I guess I should say the number one use we're going to have for body-worn cameras that I envision is the documentation of evidence. When making suspect statements, witness statements, walking into a crime scene and having instead of having to get out a camera and film it, you're going to have that. I mean, that's going to be a day-to-day use of the program. So kind of to your point about trust and accountability, it would almost take an incident of a magnitude for this to be used to do that. But I definitely think that you bring some good points as far as what is our current level, which I hope is still high. I mean, in the last customer satisfaction survey was 86%. I'm not naive. I would envision it took a little dive due to the national situation. But that's something that we can look at. And then obviously as we use it, I think it'll be easy to see how beneficial or not the program was based on what the amount of video or what we're able to use it for. But
there's a lot of metrics that have been talked about in body-worn cameras. It reduces conflict between an officer and a community member that are engaged in some kind of a dialogue. So it reduces, uses of force, injuries. That's all part of, we monitor those statistics as a part of our routine through the Office of Professional Responsibility. So that's certainly data that we'll be able to see how it's impacted as we begin to roll out this program. And I think the trust point is a key here in that, there's a lot of conversation about the need for video evidence. And, the hope is that, we're trying to be open and transparent. We're doing this because it's, it's sort of where we are as a culture now that, people prefer to have video when things go to court or if there's a complaint against an officer. And, we don't have exact metrics of how we're going to determine its successfulness yet. We're still trying to get the basic policy rolled out. But what your point is well taken. I mean, there does need to be an evaluation as we move through the program over the years.
And then just as a follow-up, obviously not all those metrics can be or are appropriate to be made public, but I think it would do some good to think about what aspects of that could be shared with the public to gain confidence that the program is being successful and the money is being, having a good return on investment.
Okay, thanks, John. Mike?
I'll do a quick editorial comment, then a IT management question, then a business question. And that is, so the editorial comment is, I'm delighted to hear that the police here are confident in their professionalism and willingly, adopting the video. And I think in some senses, it makes one argument in favor of the video is lots of other people are going to have video, bystanders with mobile phones, things that Amazon markets as doorbells that are actually surveillance cameras. So it just makes sense to have some video of our own, if you will. Not that will always carry the day, but there's going to be video, whether you took it or somebody else took it. And that's very clear in the cases that have come to national attention. So that's the editorial comment. Glad our officers are confident to put on the cameras. But my IT management question is, we had the assistant superintendent of schools, talking here last month about going virtual with classrooms, and we've worked traditionally mostly with DTS, but questions about networking and storage in the cloud and maintenance of servers are really quite generic IT infrastructure questions. And so my question for our police colleagues is, do you feel like you're on your own to take care of that? Or is there a resource within Arlington County that could help you address that, thereby freeing you up more for the application side of things, like, what's adequate for security, what's adequate for chain of custody and evidence, and not have to worry about storage and transmittal and compatibility between platforms and so forth. So do you feel like there's a place that you can go in the county that will help you solve those, or are you on your own?
We're definitely not on our own. We're not trying to do that piece of it. We have the Public Safety Information Technology Group as well as DTS. So, for the, what's appropriate cloud storage and transmittal and all the things you're talking about, we're not trying to own that piece. That is not part of our world. We can lend some informed opinion about, chain of custody type thing, but everything else you mentioned, we need the experts to tend to that. Nobody wants us tending to that part of it.
Okay, that was the answer I was hoping for. Last go is our friends and neighbors at Amazon have a pretty widely reported platform that's sort of like a social media platform where individual citizens who have surveillance cameras where a doorbell usually is can upload video to I'll just call it a social network platform. Is your application going to try to integrate that in any way, and how do you avoid integrating it if there's going to be a set of videos emanating from the public onto a social media platform?
So I'll answer that. First, Andy's being shy. He got an A in technology. He likes to brag about that.
That doesn't mean anybody wants to be touching it.
Meanwhile, I've seen him in action, and I'm not sure how he got the A. But so I thought this question might come up, and I do want to say, because I'm sure you're talking about an MOU with Amazon and Ring, and I just want to say the police department is not intending to enter into an MOU with Ring at this time. The only way something would end up in this same cloud-based storage software is if we had a crime and we would normally do back from the 80s on, and went and knocked on doors and canvassed for video or photos or any sort of evidence, and somebody gave us a copy of a video related to an actual crime, and then we looked at it and determined it to be of evidentiary value. There is a certain amount of storage in the system for video evidence that's not through the vendor, if that makes sense. So it would be outside obtained video related to a crime. So if your car got broken into in your driveway and you wanted to give me that video because it's got a great picture of the person that broke into your car, I would then use that and upload it to this same system under a case file. Because right now, what's happening is we're burning CDs of that and then putting it into the property section. And then if you ever need it, you got to go check it out of property and then hope that your computer still has a DVD player on it or a CD player, which at this point is becoming obsolete. So we're trying to manage all of the video evidence in the same system. But no, it would not be that somebody can automatically just send stuff and upload it into that system.
We're also working on our policy.
Thanks.
So, in today's world, when we go out, like if a significant crime happens and we go out and start gathering as much video as we can, particularly if we don't know who did it yet, we just sort of bulk collect whatever we can get because it may be of value. So we're really trying to work on our policy and our procedure to, we can't just put gigabyte after gigabyte of data into a storage system. It just becomes cost prohibitive at some point because honestly, in Virginia law, some unsolved serious felony crimes, we have to maintain this information for up to 75 years. Mm-hmm. So it gets, incredibly expensive, even in bulk cloud storage. So that's also part of the conversation, is making sure that we're never going to jeopardize a case, but, are there ways that we can not put every video in Arlington in this system every time something happens? So that's part of the conversation too. And honestly, the body camera part hopefully will be done and rolled out. That's just a bigger conversation, going to take a little more effort and time.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Denise, and then Mark, I know you have in the chat, and happy to, we'll go there. So Denise, next, your hand is up.
Yes, I was wondering, I can't tell from the numbers, but do you have a sufficient supply of cameras?
I mean, that's something we're going to have to look at. I think it is now. It'll be more than enough to outfit our uniformed personnel. The question is, and it kind of goes to the cost effectiveness for a detective that may sit at their desk the majority of the week. It's a lot of money. You have to buy the licenses per camera, and it includes the storage at a set rate. I think it was like $100 a month. I mean, don't quote me on that, but these, estimate. So if I'm paying $100 a month for a camera to just sit there on a desk, so our primary goal was to outfit the individuals interacting with the community on a daily basis, and then have a cache for those that when they go out they can use them. But with anything, we're obviously open to modifying it if we get into the system and find out there aren't enough cameras. But I do believe right now, yes, we have sufficient numbers.
Okay. And then Mark Jones, who's joined us today because he may join the commission, he's considering putting in an application, and he actually had a question. Mark, do you want to unmute or and ask?
Yeah,
it's a great question. Thanks.
Nice to meet you. This is great. I appreciate your participation in the initiative. The question is: Sheriff's Department looking to use the similar platforms for where that's appropriate? You're sharing with the fire department. I was just curious if those conversations or if you're in sync with them.
Yeah, they get 30 cameras, and they will deploy those for the deputies that leave the jail. They have a very extensive video system in the jail itself, so they have everything being monitored there. So they will use the body cameras for people that go out to serve warrants or do civil process or transports, I believe. But yeah, they get 30.
God, I didn't think I missed that when you were going through the count.
Sorry, I talk fast.
No, it's good. Thank you.
No, that's great. Good. Martha, question. Go ahead.
Okay, I'm taking myself off mute. We had the police chief came and talked to us about this 2 or 3 years ago, and there was a concern expressed about how are we going to be able to know what we've got, because if you've ever used a system where they're trying to categorize the content, now video is unfriendly when it comes to that. Suppose you wanted to go back and look at, and I know the 75 years information is helpful, but you want to know what's on this video. You got to watch it, or you have to come up with some way of characterizing it. And I think the letter is amazing.
Sorry, if I cut you off, go ahead.
We just lost part of your audio, Martha. You said you think, and then we lost it. Could you say that one more time?
Sorry. I think that the being able to know what's on a video is a big challenge. What are you going to do? Watch everything?
So every officer is responsible for tagging or labeling or categorizing the video. Each video that's taken, it's going to be like a call for service, or if it was a use of force, it would be tagged differently. A traffic stop would be tagged some way. A pursuit would be tagged another. And then anything that gathered evidence. So if I went on a call for service and I arrested somebody and they confessed to me, that would be tagged as evidence. Anything that is not tagged as basically evidence, use of force, or I'm sure there's other categories. There's a 90-day retention. So if it were to happen and the officer doesn't think anything of it, like I make a traffic stop and I'm thinking that everything is fine, we have to retain it for a certain amount of time in case somebody complains or there becomes an administrative investigation. And we've set that at 90 days, hoping that would be long enough for any citizen to come forward with a complaint. But if we know force was used, we know there's evidence, we know there's some value for court, they will be retained under the Library of Virginia, which has very long retention processes. Now with that, there is a duty of the supervisor to do audits of their individual officers. One, to make sure that they're tagging the video, well, actually to make sure they're doing the pre-shift check and the post-shift check to make sure it's working, that they're tagging the videos as they should, that they're tagging the videos correctly and labeling them correctly, that they're in fact using it when they should and not shutting it off. So there is an audit system, but to your point, no, nobody's going to sit down and watch every officer's video for every minute of every day.
But we will, one of the things that gets a little closer to not having to watch just bulk video is each video is going to be tagged to a specific officer. It'll have a tag, of traffic stop or one of the other tags. So and our case numbers are going to be in. So if you're looking for a video about a specific case, you can go to that case number. So we're trying to use as much metadata as we can to help narrow that. And that some of the tagging that Adrian was talking about is also going to guide and drive the destruction, because, if we have to keep video for, 30, 40, 50 years, well, the officer who took that video is not going to be here when it's time to get rid of it. So we've got to have some automatic destruction periods built off of the tags too. So, it's not perfect because there's not going to be a summary written of what's on every video, but between the officer's unique badge number, the case number, the tag, that's as much as we feel we can do with it right now.
Okay, it just seems like it's very slanted towards collecting negative data by the officers. I mean, is there any other redeeming value for having it?
I'm not understanding the question.
Okay, so you have officers, you have tape on officers and what they're doing, and after 90 days, they can, or some group can, delete it. So that seems to me to be slanted in the direction of trying to do what people are currently complaining about, which is that if we had the video, we could see what people are doing. I think this is somewhat problematic.
That the video is going to be deleted after 90 days or something?
No, I'm on the other side of the question. I think it in a way is a hostile action to police officers.
Oh, okay. Well, actually, so I will say this, and part of the reason that officers support it is we will get complaints and somebody will say the officer was rude, or the officer did this, that, and the other. And one of the greatest things for the officers is to have that video that shows they were being professional, that they did everything correct. So in a sense, yes, we use it to absolve ourselves, but then don't forget the number one thing I believe this is going to be used for is the gathering of evidence. Every time that a suspect or an arrestee confesses to something, it's going to be caught on tape. It's never now it's no longer the officer just having to testify to say, the suspect said this to me, I have a video recording of what they said. I'm documenting crime scenes from the time that I get on there without any question. It's automatically being done. So that's a huge benefit to us. That's not just an accusation of officer misconduct, if I'm understanding what your point is.
That's right, but it seems slanted towards capturing officer misconduct rather than the broader uses. And I guess we'll have to wait and see.
Well, I get what you're saying now, but I agree with Adrian. The primary point is to capture exactly what happened, what we did, what we didn't do, what the person said, what we said. And, some of the longevity of how long we have to keep it is really outside of our control, because we feel as though we should follow the Library of Virginia retention policy, which is incredibly long, in my opinion.
75 years. That's pretty long, Andy.
That's a lot of time.
Well, you have been most generous with your time, and we'd like to reserve for you all to come back and let us know how things are going once you've made these decisions, and you feel like you've had some time to see what works, what doesn't work, and that'd be wonderful. So,
Sure.
do you have any questions for us before Andy and Adrian, before we close this part out?
I don't think so. Thanks for having us.
Yes, thank you. And thank you for not hitting us with strong IT questions. I was really sweating that.
Yeah. I helped you.
Yeah, the technology would have bailed me out.
That's all right. That's fine. Thank you so much. David, did you have a quick question? Or David? David Husband, did you have a quick question? I saw your hand up, or were you just testing? Yep. Gone. All right. Thank you so much, and we will be in touch. We really appreciate you staying late and
Can you hear
being
me?
able to give us this briefing.
Sure.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Okay.
All right.
Bye.
Bye.
Take care.
No.
Okay.
that.
Hey, Kevin. Now you've come up. Well, next, what we wanted to do is look at the minutes for August. And there were a couple things, Angela, if you want to put those up, that'd be great. There are a couple things I wanted to share with you that I added. One, we did, because Angela had great data, we put down who, Martha had asked, hey, wait a minute, don't we normally put down who attends? And we do. So we changed that. And
Can you hear
also,
me? Oh, good.
uh,
This is David. Can you hear me
hey,
now?
David, now we can hear you. Couldn't hear you
Okay.
before.
Yeah, that's okay. Sorry. I
Could not hear you.
wasn't
Okay.
able to make it work, and I apologize for that, but that's
No,
fine.
that's okay. David, you know what? You can put it in the chat and I can send them a note if you have a question.
No. It's not. I think they answered along the way, but I just was concerned because I was like, no one seemed to hear me, and I was very sad.
All right, now you're back.
All right. Thank you. Bye.
No problem. So we have changed, actually, Angela, if we could go to the one I sent, the most recent one, then it has who, this one is the older one. Yeah. So what I did was what you might have noticed that Kevin Robbins is not the Comcast representative. You have many talents, Kevin, but so we changed that to Kevin Broadhurst. And I added who attended. But I wanted to know, while Angela's bringing this up, were there any other suggestions or changes to the August minutes that you all, thanks so much. There it goes. Yeah. Any other changes or, and if you could keep it to yeah, there we go. David, you were not, David Husband, you weren't with us last time in August, right? Is that right? Okay, you're on mute, but I think you said no.
No, I was not there.
Okay, all right. So
yeah.
we recorded that correctly. So check and make sure that everybody's accounted for and members present. And then we did change Kevin Broadhurst to for Comcast, but wanted to see, was there any other changes, edits, suggestions that those of you who attended wanted to make? Hearing none, I'll entertain a motion to adopt.
I move we adopt the minutes.
I second.
Okay, who seconded?
Frank.
Oh, thanks, Frank. All right, all those in favor?
Aye.
I think
Aye.
yeah, we'll get good at this and
Aye.
we'll put our hands up or the thumbs up.
And that should have said August 3rd minutes, right?
I thought it was August 5th.
Look up here at the top. I can't tell if that's a 3 or a 5.
It's a 5.
It's a 5.
It's a 5.
August 5th, 2020. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? All right. So
No, I just have a quick question. I thought Frank was there, but his
Beg your
name
pardon?
isn't there.
Who?
I thought Frank was present, but I don't see his name.
Oh, he's vice chair. Right there. You mean Frank Jazzo? You mean Frank?
Yes. Thank
Yeah, yeah.
Right there. Good.
I'm
Denise,
on
keep looking out for him, It's good. All right. So, all right, minutes adopted. That's great. And I just want to give a public kudo to Angela, because all of you remember when we had to pass around this duty. And thank you very much, Angela. Angela did this, got it done. Yay, a clap. So thank you so much, Angela. It's wonderful to have your support. It's really made a difference, made it much easier. And next on our agenda is David has a new portal to share with us. So David, you want to show us? You're going to request control and
Yep.
Great.
There we go.
So this is hot off the press, right, David?
This is hot off the press as of Monday. We went live with Data Hub 2.0, our new open data portal that we've been working on. That wanted to make sure you guys got a look at. I know there was a bunch of press out there if you hadn't caught it or had a chance to take a look at it. But I just wanted to review some of the, the top end, kind of features of the new site. We're really proud of it. Technically, it's setting the stage for us to be able to work with the data more, both internally and externally, with our open data sets and just the data behind the scenes. So there's a lot underneath the hood. But the manifestation of that, the viewing of that, is our nice portal that we have here. So a couple of the features, I'm going to kind of go down the list and down the page of what we've kind of improved, what's new, what's the same. So starting from the top, and just one other thing, one that you'll see in this and some of the changes that I'll touch on later down at the bottom of the page is we've moved away or added to not just being open data sets. One of the key things about the site that we worked on as a team in DTS is it's great to have data sets. It's great to have the API for that. It's great to allow people to work with that data, have access to that data. But also, what are we doing with the data as a county? How are we visualizing this data? And what are some of the applications where open data and our enterprise data warehouse has use for our citizens and that application? So we've augmented our open data sets. We've cleaned that up. We've added more improved metadata behind the scenes and for the public to use. Just for the data sets. But we also added at the top of the page the ability to search the open data portal and have improved the search features to get people better results. And we do have different data portals that are out there like Arlington Wallet. And one of the things that we wanted to do is be able to join that, even though it's in a separate platform, under one roof. So be able to get to that easier and kind of have a better user interaction and user experience for everyone. So we're able to link out to various different data sources that are within the county and start that, that journey of having a more unified data experience and website experience as well. So that's another improved feature that allows you to go through there. Obviously, we're moving down the page. We have what we had in version 1.0 that served us very well and continues to serve us is the open data sets that we have. That program is run by Jamie Lewis. She does a great job with that, working and trying to get that information put together. But we've been able to improve that, as I mentioned, with more detailed metadata. So you're actually able to see when this type of information is being updated, how fresh that is. And be able to interact with that better as a resident. Moving on down the page, this is where we go new, even newer, is how are we visualizing this? So as I mentioned, it's great to have the data sets, but now we're moving into that visualization. One of the things,
Bless you.
and it's
I
a very
was on mute.
is how data can be very and the visualization can be a very powerful tool and a very amazing representation here, especially in COVID times, is what we see in terms of parking meter transactions. As you can see in March, COVID started. This is what you start seeing as the revenue dropping off. This is a powerful message that residents can see of. This is a part of the impact of what we're seeing on things like budget and how it's affecting programs. And another part of this was interesting pointed out by one of our finance folks is the V recovery. I think DMF finance has spoken about that as the different types of recovery for different things. well, here's a bit of a V in terms of parking revenue, but it's not a full V. But yet you can go out and see that in terms of parking meter transactions of that impact of COVID in this case. I also draw upon parking meters because this is about 25 million plus records. We add about 1 million records a month to this. And with the new architecture that we have behind the scenes, we're able to gather that data, process that data, and then surface that to the users really without blinking an eye now. And that is a big step over our old platform where we were struggling a bit with the old platform and a bit limited. We got rid of that limitation and then some. And that's the ease of scrolling through that amount of information and the impact that the user sees. We've also kind of expanded that, into other areas as well. This is a different type of chart that we're showing for report a problem tool, but you can see kind of what we're seeing through COVID, and it's kind of fascinating to go out there. The visualizations tell the story. The data is that one piece, but the visualization, and then ultimately the applications are what drives that, and that's where that value comes in. We're also able to have an open data showcase. And these are some of the applications that we're using that are powered by our new data warehouse or Data Hub 2.0. I think it's the second most clicked on page on arlingtonva.us on our page. It's property search. That's all powered by this platform. We're also moving into new uses for maps powered by that data, and be able to surface that in a user-friendly manner to our users, and that's mobile optimized, so you can get it anytime, anywhere. So that's, in the cliff note, that's what we're doing with the site. We're all really happy about it. I think we've got some pretty good feedback from folks about it. There's more to come with it. It's kind of brave new world with this for data transparency and the ability to process more records externally. Internally, we're doing a lot of conversations with various different departments of what this means to them and what we can surface for more data and kind of plug into the program and be able to leverage this across the board. So that's our new open data portal. That's Data Hub 2.0.
All right. Thank you, David. Any questions for David? Any comments?
This is Denise. I have one. I'm sorry, I got a lot of questions tonight. Does this track like, the service app and how many items are reported by category?
So we go into the number of service requests. So you're talking report a problem?
Correct.
Yep. So we're
Okay.
tracking the number of them and the service types. We are looking at trying to get more information from the report a problem tool to be able to drill down in that. So there's going to be some changes that are coming with that. And we're looking at that, and we're talking with DES actually about that as well, because they kind of own that application that resides over there. So we're able now to have more detailed conversation and be a little bit more granular, and then see what we can do.
Okay. Go ahead. Somebody else has got their hand up. Go ahead. I see one hand up. Or is that just an old hand up?
It's an old hand.
Okay. Any other questions, comments for David? Oh, Kevin. Okay, I see. Kevin, go ahead. And John. So Kevin and then John. Kevin, can you unmute?
I think he's off mute.
Okay.
I might be able to hear him now.
Kevin, can't hear you. I did hear you before when you came in. Why don't we, John, why don't you go, and then Kevin.
Yeah. David, I was just curious about traffic.
We haven't looked at the traffic numbers yet. I don't have them offhand yet. We're kind of taking a look at what this week will look like, but we'll probably have more numbers on those soon.
This looks great, and I can totally see how this lays the foundation for making data more usable. So that's good work.
Yep, thanks.
Yeah,
And
make sure, David, and relay to people we were pleased.
Yep,
Okay.
I definitely will.
Kevin, I know you've got your hand up. Do you have a question? Can you, if we can't hear you, you want to put it in the chat? He's typing. We'll get it one way or another.
We have ways.
And David, you'll be able to come back to us then. Obviously, you're here every month. You'll be able to give us an update. Oh, okay. Amazing look and feel. And how do you publicize it?
So we've kind of taken a really different approach on the comms on this. Obviously, we have the regular press release. Arlington Now ran an article about that as well. We're trying to get the word out there. Anecdotally, it has had an impact. In my neighborhood on the listserv over here, it's been a topic of conversation. So I think the comms and the word have gotten out on that. We continue to evolve on that comms piece, and we're going to continue to kind of iterate on that to make sure that people know about these things. It's not a launch something and you go, okay, we stop communicating about it. And we don't want that to happen because we want to make sure people are aware of this and use it. The value is out of using it as well.
Right. Well, Kevin does have, his question is 25 million records, 1 million per month. David, can you elaborate on the types of records?
Yeah, so
that's those numbers.
Yeah, that's for parking. So individual parking records. So I think it's duration of time and money and revenue that's coming off of that, which you've seen on the site as well. But if you also want to go and look at the data set for that, all that information is actually in the metadata as well. You can look at that as well.
You were so excited to say that, weren't you?
Yes, I was. That's the beauty of it.
Okay.
Kevin, I hope that answers your question.
Yeah, it's fine. Thanks.
Now I hear you, David.
Oh, you do? Oh, you hear me?
Yes.
Oh, great.
Yeah, you're back.
Let's see if I can find a follow-up then. So if 25 million is just the parking, then what is your total ad each month in records if you're doing 25 million just for parking?
I don't know I probably could come up with the overall. That's
fine. But it's orders of magnitude more than probably.
Yeah, we have more. That's probably our largest one that we have currently. But now that we're not platform limited, we're able to go after bigger data sets and pave the way for, things like smart cities and taking sensor information and big bulky items, and streaming items, things like that. We're able to take that in.
Great.
All right. Well, thank you, David, very much. And next on the agenda, Mike is going to give us an update. David will give us an update from the task force, but first they have to brief the county manager before they can brief us, which makes sense since he's the one who organized the task force. But Mike, as some of you recall, was our representative on the task force. And for one of our initiatives, the thing that we really would like to see is digital being included in the master strategic plan. So that's one of the things we really want to look at and see what's the best roadmap for that. And so Mike sent some material beforehand, but will walk us through a PowerPoint. So Mike, thank you, and turn it over to you. But you're muted at the moment.
Let me see if I can bring up the slide deck.
I'm sure you can. We know we tested it, so it'll happen.
Yeah.
No.
I agree we tested. I can bring it to my screen, but I can't apparently share it yet, so something must be doing something incorrectly. Do you need to give me permission to use the share tray?
No, shouldn't need to, because we are not sharing we're not sharing anything. And there was a question from David about more than 9 people at a time. There we go. It's David in Zoom. It's more. Maybe somebody there's the gallery view.
Killing me. I can't see anyone. This is no substitute for our meeting. I just want to say that.
It looks like.
By the way, we just saw it, Mike. We just saw it.
And
yeah,
I've
you
got
had
a
it, Mike. You're still
and
presenting.
I have a message.
If you're going through your AOL mail, then we can see it.
Yep.
No, if you'll let me have the floor for a second, I now have a message on my screen that says your presentation ended. Someone else has started sharing. I don't know who that someone else is, but it's not me.
Right.
Is it Phil? Phil, are you going through your AOL mail?
No.
Who has AOL? Like, that's the person who's presenting.
Right.
So I just tried to share my.
There you go. You're sharing again.
Bravo.
All right.
Also, I noticed no one claimed AOL mail. I love it.
This really speaks badly of us as the Tech Commission, guys.
LinkedIn has a whole article on this, how your mail domain says what you are about technology.
Mm-hmm.
All right.
Are we ready?
Yes, and Mike, we can see the digital Arlington, and if you want to
Can you start the show?
Yeah, if you want to have the view be show, then show the slide deck or you can leave it like this, whichever is more comfortable for you.
I'm going to leave it like this just because being that it's a PDF file, I think I can use the left-hand side to change the slides more easily than I can.
Okay, no
for the
problem.
show.
We can see it. Go forth.
All right, so let's go. I think I have 15 minutes on the agenda, and I think we may be running a little behind. So I'd like to start with kind of a level set and a time management thing here. I presume people have had a chance to read at least the executive summary that was sent in the email on Friday, and maybe the slide deck. There was a 38-page paper with it as well. I'm not going to attempt to cover that in this, and I'll say the slide deck is sort of a slimmed down address to what the commission's actions might look like around this. So it's a good way to get a conversation started, and I want to emphasize the whole exercise is about getting a conversation started. So this is not intended to be the last word on anything. It is intended to be the first word in an engagement process, first with our commission, and then presumably going out to county officials and to the general public. But as as Mary touched on already, if you remember back in January, Ken Bell briefed us on this broadband and digital services task force that had been appointed by the county manager, and I was going to be our representative on it. I'm not aware of what the status of that is, except I did choose to step away back in March. And then in the period of time where I and maybe you thought the pandemic was going to be a 2 or 3 week experience, I said, well, I'll take the opportunity to make sure I deliver on my promise and I'll write something. So the paper that you have is from April 13. The slide deck is from June 24th, and those have already been shared within the county. And I've had literally no response on them. Today, I want to go through the digital Arlington slide deck to talk about what we might do with this. I would say it is in nature very conceptual. And to me, one of the challenges we've had as a commission that's grown from sort of oversight of monopoly cable and telecommunications licenses to information technology writ large, and information technology is so ubiquitous, it sort of would invite us into almost an infinite number of opportunities inside the county. And so I was trying to get a way to focus on where we can make our best input on that. And then I'll just acknowledge that the important often gets crowded out by the urgent, and so the longer paper, which was written in April, The things that have attracted our attention as a commission since then, including virtual schooling, contract tracing for the pandemic, police body cameras, they're a good example of how multifaceted these issues are and how information technology is in there with a range of other issues that will require some significant thought on the part of the county. And so the challenge for me was, how do you kind of create a framework or a process that would allow us to make our best contribution to the overall process, and with the goal of getting as good in Arlington at planning the digital environment as we have been historically at planning the physical environment. What I'd like to do is make sure I don't chew up any more than 10 of these minutes, so that we have a few minutes at least left for questions. And I'm pretty much available by phone or email if others want to continue the conversation. But why don't I just move on now, and I'll just touch on pieces of these slides as we go. And in this case, I'll just go to the bottom where it says it's a value driver. I sincerely believe that digital planning in Arlington is going to have as big an effect on the quality of life here going forward as planning in the physical world, and specifically transit-oriented development, has had in the past world. Personally, I feel a debt of gratitude to the foresight of the people in Arlington who came up with the concept of transit-oriented development, and I think we're all benefiting from that now in terms of the quality of life here and the tax base of the community. And I think it's time to have a similar intellectual effort around what does digital mean for the quality of life in Arlington going forward. We also have the convenience, I'll say, of a mandate from the state legislature to do something about this. Granted, that mandate is mostly tilted toward the basics of broadband access, but I think it's reasonably interpreted to extend out to digital services and the other things that are logically connected to that. As you've probably seen, Arlington has a planning process now that has 11 sort of separate domains in it. And those planning processes, for the most part, are fairly mature. But the digital world has not yet made its appearance, at least not as a slice of the pie. And one could argue whether that's the best way to do it or not. I'll argue in favor of it, to say it's so important. The digital infrastructure in Arlington, and even the presentation that David just gave to us about handling data, and our police folks gave us about body cams, the digital architecture of the county government per se is sufficiently important that I think it deserves its own slice. And then I would go further to say, and then there probably should be a mandatory segment in each of the other slices that talks about digitization. What are the opportunities and risks attending there? And even just randomly picking something like wastewater treatment. Most pipes now have sensors in them, and what you do with that data is going to be important, and perhaps a boon to the matter of waste management. But in any case, you could hardly pick a governmental function that isn't now being dramatically affected by information technology. So as I've already said, add a 12th slice and add a mandatory segment in each of the other pieces. I think that also allows a good fit with the organization of the county, which is to say DTS would be the likely authors of the 12th slice regarding the digital infrastructure of the county. And then DTS and its partnership with the other mission-focused parts of the county would help those folks imagine and describe how they're going to use digital technologies to get their functions done, whether it's wastewater management or police or recreation or what have you. I'm just going to touch on each of the outer edges on this. One is the piece that says focus. I've done a great deal of reading over the last year about this, and one of the real challenges for municipal governments is to lead with policy and intended outcomes, and then see how the technology fits. I think the marketplace leads technology firms to come to the municipal government and say, I have this technology, I'm sure it will help you somewhere. You buy it, and then we'll figure out how to use it. And some of the natural healthy tension that occurs between vendors and buyers, I think we should focus on helping the county get better at saying what problems we're trying to solve or what opportunities we're trying to capture, so that folks can demonstrate to the county how their technology would help with that public policy objective. Similarly, all the way over on the right, regarding excellence, reliably deliver a comprehensive, value-driven, forward-looking portfolio of digital services. There are so many opportunities before our county and almost any other county that evaluating them and judging which ones you want to pursue now, which ones you want to kind of hold in a steady state, which things need to be retired. That sort of management of investment portfolio will go on perpetually. And the question is sort of how good are we at doing that, and how well are we able to do it sort of county-wide? And I think that's a big challenge for us and, frankly, for every other county. We do have a range of experience on our own commission, and there is a wealth of scholarship that's been addressed to this, because depending how you count it, we're now about 40 years into the digital revolution, and smart people have been addressing these problems and trying to come up with solutions, especially from a IT governance within an enterprise, and from a service management and a public policy and a acquisition point of view. So I'm all for using the experience that is accumulated within our commission here, and using a lot of the scholarship that's out there at our disposal. I tried to, and the email has this in it, I tried to identify 8 principles, nothing magic about that number, that would effectively be descriptive, normative, affirmative statements about what one sees in organizations that are doing this well. And then I just sort of grouped them into those things that the county has the most control over, those things that the county probably has some pretty good influence over but can't really control, and those things that are probably arguably outside of the county's control, but we may want to weigh in on it as like a moral authority. For example, something like public trust or privacy or digital equity. Over on the Evolved IT governance, I'm focused primarily on the IT governance, which I was just describing as akin to a portfolio management of IT investments, but also a kind of disciplined service management regimen that happens inside the county. The Elevate Digital Services thing is sort of what we're talking about now, about how to get more engaged in the existing planning processes in the county, and then that would extend from the master plan process into the budgeting, into the staffing, into the acquisition planning, and then over here on the enhanced public trust. I think that's one of the key distinctions between a governmental organization and a private sector organization, is that we really need to maintain the public's trust going forward. And that may sometimes change the calculus of what choices are made. Let me move on. And so I've touched on these 3 already. I'll just kind of zoom through them. And then lastly, and this is sort of the business at hand, or the ask. So once people have had a chance to digest this model, and models are a pretty loose term here, if these 8 principles look like a good place to start a conversation about digital planning and engage our own membership, and then reach out beyond this to members in the county government and the general public, then I think we should sort of adopt it, say this is the way we're going to go about it, and then begin that public engagement process. I would say roughly similar to the way the county already engages the public on matters of capital planning. Even though we aren't building a building and we aren't buying land, we're doing something that's consequential for the citizens of the county. And the question is, can we get them interested and engaged enough to participate with us in this planning process. And then lastly, much more product oriented, do we want to produce a digital services plan that would take its role as the 12th slice in the comprehensive plan, and then sort of on what timeline do we wish to do that? So that's my slide deck. I hope I saved enough time for questions. There's an awful lot more in the paper, and some of what's in the paper is intentionally provocative in terms of true historical stories and future tense provocative stories, and I'm open to discussion on any of it.
Kevin, did you have your hand up because you had
I'll take it back
a new
down.
question? Okay. Okay, I wasn't sure.
All right.
Comments, questions for Mike? Mike, and this is, this gives us a lot of food for thought, by the way. So you've done a lot of, a lot of thinking around this. John? You're muted.
Thank you. I had a chance to read through the white paper, Mike, in detail. So thank you for sending that in advance.
Also, Mike, can you stop presenting so we can see everyone again?
Mike, that is the extroverted David who really
I really miss all of you guys. I can't handle it.
Wants to be connected here.
Now, if I simply minimize, will that do it?
Yes, that should do it.
No, you need to close the share tray.
Yeah, you've got to go up to the
that's
same
true.
arrow.
Gotta stop sharing. Gotta stop sharing. Too much sharing.
Same arrow where you shared. You can.
Yeah, and I don't have it on the screen any longer. Let me. Where's the share?
Mark, I see you have a question as well. After John.
There we go. I think I did it.
Yes. All right, John. Now you can go ahead. Now I can watch you ask your question. I'm excited.
Thank you, David. Appreciate that. So I first off, thank you for sending the paper in advance to give us an opportunity to read it. I think that's very valuable for to have these kind of discussions, not drag out for meeting over meeting. And thank you for the work that you put into this. A lot of really good thinking. I would just comment, generally speaking, that I think the framework fits very nicely with my view of the types of things that the commission should be working on and should be advising the county on. And without a digital planning, comprehensive plan element, whether it's its own slice or segments of the other comprehensive plan elements or both, I don't see where we really fit in and what policy we're advising the county board on other than ad hoc issues. And so to the extent that I think we all want to help the county board drive policy and the county in a positive direction in the IT space, I think this is really important. And I would be fully endorsing of the framework that you've laid out in terms of those policies and those principles, those kind of 8 principles, and definitely open to hearing what other people have to think about, maybe ones that aren't covered. But I really like the framework in terms of things that are, things that the county can control, things that the county can influence, things that the county should be concerned about. I think that's a really good framework to set things out. So thank you for that.
Hey, thanks, John. And I think one of the challenges here is it kind of calls on us to anticipate what we think will be important. I think we've kind of been well served by DTS and the other parts of the county coming and saying, here's what we've done, or here's what we're about to launch, and I think we might be of more value to them if we could say, here's what we think is going to happen over the next 5 years. And so we're starting to think about some of this now.
Great. Martha, you had a comment, question?
I did. I thought it was a really nice presentation, but I wasn't sure whether you were saying, Mike, that there really isn't a physical concomitant to this. And I wanted to remind people that a few years back, we had an issue where the communications capabilities did not work past, say, floor 15. And Jack Belcher got involved in working on it to make sure that when things were built, like our schools, that the communications actually worked. And we ran into that. We've run into it again, of course, but so there is something else that's physical. I don't know what to call it or not. So Mike, can you respond to that just briefly?
Oh, sure. I mean, certainly the fiber optic cable is physical, so I don't mean to be making a distinction that says there's absolutely nothing physical that's consequential to our digital planning. What I mean to be saying is much more conceptually, as an analogy, that the amount of effort over decades that Arlington has put into thinking about what it wants the physical environment of Arlington to look like in the future with these 10-year plans and these zoning regulations and site plan approvals, that's a tremendous amount of government mind power going into collaborating with the private sector developers about what we want to happen in the physical environment of Arlington. I'm suggesting that a way to get motivated about this is to say the digital planning is probably going to be as consequential to the quality of life in Arlington going forward as all of our mature physical planning processes have to get us to the point that we're at right now. The physical won't stop. Another way, I think, for me to frame this, and this is more in the paper, and it's more of a puzzling question to me, and that is private sector developers of real estate in Arlington participate in a negotiated process with the county to achieve the desired outcome because they kind of have to, because of zoning and because of site plan approval. But when somebody wants to begin a technology-enabled service within the Arlington jurisdiction, there's at present no similar forum in which, for example, and I'm just going to do this as an illustration, which David or other people from the county sitting with all this data could say to a service provider like Parking Panda, I'm just making this up off the top of my head, here's what we've got and here's what we would require of you regarding privacy. And so the question is, what could we devise in Arlington about realizing digital objectives that would be similar to what's served Arlington well in the zoning and site use processes in the physical world? And I don't know the answer to that yet, and I think the answer will be evolving. I think some of the private sector participants don't necessarily value government involvement in what they're doing. So it will be kind of a big challenge on us to make ourselves relevant and useful enough that a private sector organization would want to collaborate. But as I think we've heard in some of the past presentations, those private sector organizations, for example, Microsoft on the contract tracing, they're looking for jurisdictions to partner with who they think are capable and reasonable and talented. So the question is, how do we best put our foot forward and get engaged with those private entities? Because I think it's simple to say that applications of interest in the future will be some bewildering combination of tons of data from the county, from consumers, from platform providers, from you name it. And the question is, can you organize that all into a useful application that respects people's consumer and citizen rights and makes Arlington a better place? I hope so.
So we will definitely have more conversations about this, but at least we could start the conversation. And thank you, Mike. And there was one question from the chat, and then we do need to move on. Phil was asking, what do we know about the interest in these matters at the county board level? Phil, what Frank and I can tell you is certainly our discussions with Christian, he really is interested in looking at this in terms of what is the best way to plan moving forward. And so, and I think David, when he briefs Mark, since it's Mark's task force, David will be able to report to us in terms of what Mark's interest is in terms of moving forward. So we'll get a sense. But I think there's a real recognition that digital is critical. And so question in the chat, John was asking David Herlihy, David, what do you think the timeline is when you'll brief Mark? Any idea?
Not right yet. No, I'll let
Okay.
you know.
Yeah,
as soon as I can.
we realize
And-
it's crisis.
Can I make one quick point? It's
Sure.
brief. I
Brief.
am reading through your thing, Mike, briefly, and I noticed your call out of the state, and that's actually something that over the last year on the commission I've been thinking a lot more about. I would love for the county to integrate more with the statewide efforts, because it's a way to leverage our existing expertise in a more broader fashion. So I think everything you're saying is super correct and true, and I noted that you cited the 4 Northern Virginia legislators, and I want to reiterate that point. I continue to think a legislative solution for the dark fiber problem is super important, and I do think that this is a statewide issue, and I would love for us to be progressing on that. And that is everyone already knows what I have to say, so that's all I need to say.
And can I just take a brief response to Kevin's? I think it's probably our job to make the issues interesting and addressable by the board. You know what I mean? Some of these things are difficult to get your mind around. And I think we'd be doing a great service if we made this somehow manageable and actionable for the board.
Yeah, agreed. All right, so not the end of our conversation in the beginning, but thanks very much, Mike. And now we move to John. Turn it over to you. We have a draft that you presented in August.
Thank you. Yeah, and I'll bring it back up here for those folks who have not don't have it up on their screen. This is the draft letter that was sent around along with the report. I received no feedback specifically on the principles outlined in the Johns Hopkins report or the content of the letter. So I'd like to give one last chance for anyone to say that we're not, this is not something we should do, and then I would move to endorse the letter and send it to the board.
Does Madam have an E or no?
Yeah, maybe not. I was probably in French, David.
Yeah, I'm thinking that.
Yep. Thank you. Madame. She would have loved
David,
that, actually.
These are the kind of comments that should come via email before the meeting.
You know, it's COVID time. What can I say?
You've got nothing better to do.
I have so many things to do. You have no idea. I was going to suggest, since we have this moment, there are principles, the attached principles. Can you scroll down so we can look at the principles?
Mm-hmm.
I think we would attach. The idea would be that it's not in the letter.
There's no
we would
attached
simply forward the report.
How many principles are there?
Did you read the report, David?
Nope, absolutely not. Let's pretend I'm a very, very busy Madame Chair Garvey, who's not going to read the report either. Maybe we should call out the principles.
There's like 8 of them.
Maybe we should call out the top 2 or 3. Thoughts?
I mean, here's the thing. We're endorsing the report, and we're recommending that the board give direction to the county government to consider these principles as they implement policy. I don't think putting it in the letter changes that. And if they don't want to endorse them, then putting them in the letter doesn't change that.
You don't even have 2 that you think are super special that we want to call out in the letter?
I think they're incorporated by reference, David.
I totally do. I mean, but I'm just thinking like a senior county board member who may not read your Johns Hopkins report.
Now, David, if you were to select some, it wouldn't be. It would be an incomplete subset. The set is a kind of set of a piece, and they're trying to get people to focus on the ethics of this. And so I'd be very reluctant to kind of cherry pick a couple, because these are experts saying here are the things you need to think about, and there's happens to be 8 of them.
All right. I mean, I like that. If you're saying, look, you can't summarize it, I just look at this cover letter, and from the cover letter, I actually don't understand by itself what the principles mean. And so
it probably would have helped if you read the report.
Yeah, but like, let's pretend I'm busy. Like,
read the executive summary.
I agree with David. I think that I think the board members, not whether we read the report or not, the board members need to know, and if there were an executive summary that lists the
There
8
is.
that you could just, that you could just attach, I think that would be very helpful.
Yes.
Because
Yeah, just
because
lift
you
it right
don't want
out.
them to have to hunt around for or read the whole report to know whether this is something that they generally want to pursue or not. Otherwise, they're like, "What the hell is this?"
Okay.
Yep. That's. I thank you, Jack. That was Jackie, right? Thank you,
Yes,
Jackie.
Yes.
Jackie.
That is what I was trying to say less elegantly.
Jackie, you've now become David's translator.
Virtual is hard for me, guys. I'm not doing well with it.
That's all right. It's okay. All right. So,
Any other feedback?
anything else? And
If I could squeeze in another comment, I think this is a fabulous example of what you get when technology grows up in the private market funded by venture capital, which is nothing wrong with that. But you get proximity measurement that's more about ad serving. And then a technology company says, we'd really like to shine during the pandemic time. Why don't you use our technology to do this? And Arlington is fortunate to have people saying, well, what we're trying to do is contract tracing. Can your technology actually help us meet our function? And the answer is probably not. You know, they could overwhelm us with false positives. It doesn't really tell you about disease presence. It tells you about proximity of parties to one another. And so I think it's a fabulous example of how multifaceted these things can be. And I'd like to get the county board kind of ready for us to say, we'll come forward with some principles on this. And each case will have to be weighed against these multi-factors one at a time. You know, and I think we're doing a big service, and I think Hawkins is doing a big service by saying, look, these little shiny baubles that these vendors are offering you, they're not a silver bullet. You know, you need to look at your processes, you need to look at the metrics that you're trying to achieve, and answer for yourself, is this valuable to us or not? So I think it's a good communication between us and the board.
okay. And John, I think Martha has one more comment, and then we can.
Yeah, I do. I want to make sure we're all talking about the same thing. There's a letter, yes, but there's attached principles. And David, I think if you actually read them, you would like them. I don't know what that noise was. What was it?
Poor David.
I
You're taking it rough tonight, aren't you?
I agree that if I'd read them, I would like them. But let's just put it this way: have the attention span of the job you want to have is my new motto. And so I'm gonna say that we've got people dealing with a COVID pandemic who are probably let's just send the letter with the attached help file. That's all I'm saying.
Okay.
It's already a 4-paragraph letter. Let's just call it out.
I want to make sure that before we send it out, we're aware that Johns Hopkins is actually not walking this talk.
Oh.
So,
Okay.
you know, these are great principles to try to achieve. Jackie and I have had this conversation. And so somebody deal with that.
What is it they're doing or not doing?
Jackie, do you remember the example that we went through? Jackie, you're there, right?
She might be on mute.
No, I don't remember the example. We were talking about their COVID protocols, but that's a different topic.
Well, it's talking about contract tracing up here, ethics and governance guidance.
Yeah, I know.
So some of this is about COVID.
It is about COVID, but what we were talking about where they weren't walking the talk was their own hospital practices for social distancing and masking, not the principles for contact tracing.
You don't see that this is irony, that, you know, here's what we really should be doing, but oh, by the way, we need to ask, is it possible to do it? Because the person, the company, the institution that's putting it out is not actually doing it. So I
Well,
think there's a danger in sending this letter with the attached principles, even though they are definitely wonderful principles, until we're certain that these are doable.
Yeah,
So,
well, I don't think they're the same thing at all. You know, the issue of whether they properly trained everybody in every satellite, facility that they have is very different than their digital principles on contact tracing, and they're completely standalone. So,
so
I mean,
can we at least include a hyperlink to the PDF? Because I have to say, I just tried to Google this report and I didn't get it, and I had to go back to the email that John sent to find his PDF. Can we at least hyperlink to the PDF you linked to, John? Because the report itself actually is not publicly available. You got to buy it for like $12.95.
So David, your feedback is noted and will be incorporated. I was looking for other feedback.
Yeah, and I was agreeing. I'd like to see the 8 principles listed in the executive summary, but that's a separate thing.
So I think that was the second. That was going to be the second page, John. Is that what you're just going to lift the executive?
Just an excerpt. Yeah.
You're just going to lift the two page thing.
I will produce an updated version that incorporates a executive summary and link to the actual full report. I was wondering if there was any other feedback on this, aligned with what Martha's talking about. She had completely different feedback than the consumability of the recommendation.
So so they do reference the least infringement of civil liberties necessary to accomplish public health goals. I guess. What do we think that means?
I read it as they're recommending that from an ethical standpoint, there is a balance between civil liberties and public health, and that the least infringement on those civil liberties that is necessary to obtain the public health goal should be the standard. That acknowledging that you cannot achieve some public health goals without at least some infringement on civil liberties, such as the governor's stay-at-home order, right?
Yeah. So I mean, my
infringement on civil liberties.
My concern is always the privacy and security of the data. I think that's what that particular principle is addressing, but
it does go into that. So.
Okay, we really need to.
All right, I'm good.
Okay, is John? Are you going to move, make a motion, or what's your preference?
I'll table this for the moment, just because we do need to make updates, and I don't want people to vote on a draft in concept. I'd like them to vote on an actual draft. Okay. Is anyone who is suggesting? I think one of the questions I had last time was, this is not the only people who have put something like this out. Has anyone identified alternatives that they thought might be a better summation of the principles that we would like to recommend, or is this where the direction we want to go?
Okay, and make sure that when we meet the end of October, that make sure John gets suggestions, edits, so that when we come to the table, we can quickly either support or all right.
Can we adopt it in principle subject to seeing the revisions, or is that not proper? Do we have to wait for the next meeting?
I'm fine with John wanting to make sure you vote on what you see. Okay.
Okay, I'm fine with that then.
But October we'll need to we'll move forward on it or not, right? Because I don't want it to delay any more than that if we're going to do something, because things are moving rather rapidly, and the pandemic will be with us for a while.
I mean, okay, I would be okay motioning to adopt it subject to, I think what, John, you're going to do is include a hyperlink and a little description. I trust you to do that adequately, but I'm also willing to wait if others want to wait.
Any
Mike,
comments?
You're on mute, Mike.
I'm sorry. I
Mike,
was
go
thinking
ahead.
in the interest of time, is it sufficient for John to make the changes he's suggested and then send it out to us and let us vote by email?
We can't vote by email.
See, that's what that, and I knew that. That's why I wanted to sort of like.
Can't
All
vote by
right. I probably should have known it. Never mind.
Yeah, and that's
That's
why
all
I was
right.
willing to adopt it subject to an approval. But okay, that's fine.
All
I'm
right.
sorry, John.
Okay. All right. So we will move to our last agenda item. Frank, and thanks again, John. Really appreciate you shepherding this, and we will get it. We will get it done.
Yep.
We'll get it
Yes,
done.
thank you,
Right.
John.
Thanks.
All right, I will try to hit on the highlights quickly here. The Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals has upheld the FCC's caps on fees for small cell deployment and time limits for local permit reviews. So our friends at the county may be interested in that. One of the barriers to connecting more students to the internet so they can participate in remote or hybrid learning has been identifying the families that don't have a connection. But a unique partnership between the broadband providers and the Education Superhighway, which is a national nonprofit that is working class to close the classroom connectivity gap. And they've actually come up with, and both Comcast and Verizon are participating in this K-12 Bridge to Broadband program. And what it does is it enables cable broadband providers to work directly with school districts to confidentially share information to quickly identify students without broadband at home, to enable the school districts to purchase internet service for low-income families through sponsored service agreements. And the initiative builds on successful school district partnerships in Chicago, et cetera, a bunch of places. And it'll be applicable to all K-12 schools throughout the providers' coverage areas, Comcast and Verizon. So, it's encouraging to see, again, this nonprofit and commercial partnership with government to try to close the gap. The FCC has adopted temporary rules on an emergency basis to increase E-rate subsidies for schools and libraries to add bandwidth for the 2020 funding year. The money can't be used for home equipment or service for students. It has to be used for at the schools and libraries themselves, and that's by statute. An odd thing. FCC Chairman Pai and the President of the National Association of Regulatory Utility Commissioners, NARUC, has written to the National Governors Association urging action to ensure that incarcerated individuals can maintain vital community connections by addressing the too often exorbitant rates that fees charged to inmates to make intrastate calls. The FCC has been addressing interstate and international calling rates, but the FCC can't address the 80% of inmate calls that are intrastate. So, and
Mike is smiling, Frank.
I'm sure. Okay. Studies show that contact with families and loved ones during incarceration reduces recidivism and is beneficial to the children of inmates. Department of Defense has issued a request for information on a proposal to build a domestic 5G wireless network that could be shared between military and commercial users. Proposed system is being likened to the FirstNet public safety network. Yorktown High alum and former Google chairman Eric Schmidt has urged adoption of this plan. So with that, I will say good luck with that. But it is encouraging that the Pentagon is encouraging this creative sharing project, because in the past they've been fairly reluctant to have encroachment on Pentagon spectrum. So this is an encouraging development.
It is. It is. Anything else, Frank?
I think I will call it.
You were fast. That was warp speed.
Yes, yes.
All right. Well, I will thank you very much, everybody. We do try to keep this, because it's virtual, to an hour and a half. So thank you. Appreciate everybody who presented. We will entertain adjournment. Any move to adjourn?
I move to adjourn.
Okay, David. Anybody second?
I'll second.
Okay, Frank, you second. Great. All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Oh, the tired eyes. All right.
Aye.
We will we'll meet on the 28th of October. make sure and get anything to John. Take a look at that and make sure and get your feedback so that we can address that. We'll put that at the top of the agenda when we meet on the 28th. And also Holly will be coming from the county to talk about digital equity and give us an update on that. There are a couple of initiatives that she wants to make sure, so we'll have a good block of time for that. So to be continued. Thanks so much, everybody.
Have a good evening.
You
Good to
take
see you
care.
all. Bye.
Careful.
Bye.
Be careful out there. Bye-bye.
Bye.